بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I welcome you to another episode of our series Safara Al Keram. The title of the series, as we said in the beginning, is taken from a beautiful hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he said, Al-Mahiru bil-Qur'an, the one who fluently recites the Qur'an, مع السفرة الكرام البررة, will be in the company of the holy and noble emissaries, meaning the holy and noble angels. And then he went on and he said, and the one who recites the Qur'an with difficulty, in other words, he stumbles and he stops while reciting the Qur'an, فَلَهُ أَجْرًا, even he will be rewarded a double reward. So nobody loses when it comes to reciting the Qur'an. If you recite the Qur'an fluently, and this only comes about through persistent practice, and anybody can recite the Qur'an fluently. If you recite the Qur'an fluently, then insha'Allah, you will be in the company of the Safara Al Keram, of the holy and noble angels. And even if you don't recite it fluently, and you're trying to learn, and you're stumbling, and you're stopping, then even then the Prophet ﷺ said, you will not be rewarded once, you will be rewarded twice for this recitation. In another beautiful hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ, the best of you are those who learn the Qur'an and then teach it to others. And there was a student of the companion by the name of Abu Abdurrahman as-Sulami, who heard this hadith as a young man. And he was so affected by it, that he changed his entire course of life, and he devoted it to a systematic study of the recitation of the Qur'an. And he spent 30 or 40 years of his life studying and teaching the Qur'an until he became one of the most famous scholars of the recitation of the Qur'an, so much so that almost all of the recitations of the Qur'an that we have, and the ijazat or the chains of narration, they go back through him. And he said that when I heard this hadith, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَ, this is what has caused me to spend 30 years of my life doing what I'm doing now. Which is all that he would do, was that he would learn the Qur'an and then he would teach it to students. In yet another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is reported that when he entered Mecca, the companion said that he was reciting the Qur'an, وَكَانَ يَتَغَنَّ بِالْقُرْآنِ, and he would recite the Qur'an in a melodious voice, in a very beautiful and strong voice. Someone asked the narrator, how did he used to recite in a melodious voice? So the narrator responded that he would prolong it with mads. كَانَ يَمُدُّهُ مَدًّا. In other words, he would pronounce it properly and put the elongation of the vowels where they should be. So this then leads us back to our topic of the elongations or the mudud, and we were talking about a number of types of mudud. We now go on to the fourth lesson where we're talking about the rules of the mad. The rules of the mad is the longest section of Tajweed, but once again there's nothing complicated, there's nothing inherently confusing, it's just each bit at a time, make sure you understand it and memorize it. And today we will do something looks very scary, but don't worry, it's very easy. Al-mad al-lazim al-kalimi. And as I said over and over again, don't worry about these terms. The only reason I'm mentioning them even is so that you can go back to the books of Tajweed that you have and corroborate what I'm saying and make sure that this is what this particular rule is. Otherwise, no one really cares about the name of the rule. What is important is you actually understand the rule. Al-mad al-lazim al-kalimi is when a real sukoon occurs after a letter of mad. Okay, what did we do in our last episode? Who can remember? Al-adid al-sukun. And I define adid to mean a voluntary. In other words, a sukun doesn't exist there, but you put it there. Here we're talking about what if there is an actual real sukun, a permanent sukun. This is the topic of today's lesson. So it's not a sukun that you add because you became tired and you wanted to stop. This is a sukun that is actually, if you like, printed in the mushaf. It is right there in front of you. In this case, this permanent real sukoon after a letter of mad is known as mad al-lazim al-kalimi. And the meaning of this phrase is lazim means it is mandatory. Kalimi means it's in one word. So the meaning of this phrase is that the sukoon occurs in one word along with the letter of mad, and it is mandatory to prolong it. And this is the longest prolongation in the Qur'an, in the mudud. It must be belong to how many? Six harakas. We haven't come to this before. We've only done 2, 4, and 5. Now we're going to move on to the highest level, and there is nothing higher than this. There's 6 harakas. And there's a few more that are also 6 harakas, but there's nothing in which you prolong more than 6 harakas. This al-mad al-lazim al-kalimi can be divided into two categories. The first category is when there is a proper sukoon. Okay? Such as in this word, al-ana. We have an alif here, followed by a real sukoon on a lam. So then this is a mad, a letter of the mad, followed by a real sukoon. Now, to make life very easy, alhamdulillah, there's only one word in the entire Qur'an that follows this, and we have it on the screen here. And this word occurs twice, both times in Surah Yunus. The first time in verse 51, okay, where Allah Azza wa Jalla says, ثُمَّ إِذَا مَا وَقَعَ آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ الْآنَ وَقَدْ كُنْتُمْ بِهِ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. And the second time in Surah Yunus, verse 91, الآن وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين. Okay, so Amr, can you recite for us this verse, الآن وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين, and I want you to recite with the proper 6 harakas. استعذ بالله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الآن وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين.
جزاك الله خير. Notice now, الآن 6 harakas. You cannot get longer than this. So this is the only word in the Quran where there is actually a proper sukoon after a letter of the mad. In other words, you actually physically see the sukoon there. Okay, there's only one word and it occurs twice in the Quran. The first time verse 51 of Surah Yunus, the second time verse 91 of Surah Yunus. The second category of this type of mad is when a shadda occurs after the letter of mad. This is a lot more common. You have maybe a dozen or 2 dozen examples in the Quran. Okay, so this is more common. But the question arises, how is a shadda a sukoon? And for this we need to go back to what really is a shadda. For example, the word adabba. Okay? We have over here an alif followed by a ba mushaddad with a shadda on it. What is the origin of a shadda? A shadda actually is a symbol which is meant to indicate that there are 2 letters there. The first letter will be silent and the second letter has a haraka on it. So over here we have the actual way that dabba should be written is alif ba with a sukoon and then ba with a fatha. Now you see where the sukoon is. Here is a sukoon. And before the sukoon is a letter of the mad followed by a fatha. So you have dabba, like that. Likewise, al-haqqah. Okay, we have same thing. The first qaf is actually a sukoon and the second one has a fatha on it. Okay, so anytime a shadda occurs after the letter of sukoon, and this only occurs after an alif, by the way. There's no shadda that occurs after a ya or a waw, a letter of mad. Anytime this occurs, once again you prolong it to 6 harakas. Another example is al-tammatul kubra. In Surah Nazi'at you have al-tamma. Once again you have the mim mushaddad and it is preceded by an alif. Likewise in Surah Fatiha, every day we recite it. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. Once again, the ضَالِّينَ, this is a mad lazim kalimi. You have to prolong it to 6. Just a brief reminder, the leen, what type of mad is this? Adil sukun. It's not mad leen, don't get confused. the mad adil the sukun because you have placed a sukun on the noon. So I can have this second mad to be 2, 4, or 5, but this first one, al-dallin, it has to be 6. Okay? So this is our lesson for today. Very easy, that basically when a real sukoon occurs after a mad, then this is known as al-mad al-lazim al-kalimi, and you have the option, you have no option, you must prolong it to 6 harakas, whether it is a proper sukoon, and this occurs only in one word, or it is in a shadda, and the shadda is, and originally it is one letter which is sukoon, and the another letter which has a fatha on it. Let us now turn to Surah Al-An'am, verse 143. Okay, turn to Surah An'am, verse 143, and we're going to start reciting together. Surah An'am, of course, is the 6th surah in the Quran. Okay, repeat after me. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
8 أزواج.
8 أزواج.
What type of mad is on the azwaj? Out of the sukun. We stopped there. Well, actually, you're right. It is originally a natural mad, but we stopped there. When you stop there, then you don't look at what it was originally. You have put the sukun there, therefore it becomes out of the sukun, or one which you have the option of 2, 4, or 5. من الضأن اثنين ومن المعز اثنين.
من الضأن اثنين ومن المعز اثنين.
Okay, what type of mad is on the اثنين?
Lean.
Al-mad al-lean, right? Because we have a ya preceded by a fatha. It's not preceded by a kasra, by a fatha. Therefore it becomes a mad al-lean. Once again we have the option of 2, 4, or 5. قُلْ أَذَّكَرَيْنِ حَرَّمَ أَمِ الْأُنثَيَيْنِ أَمَّا اشْتَمَلَتْ عَلَيْهِ أَرْحَامُ الْأُنثَيَيْنِ.
قل أذكرين حرم أم الأنثيين أما اشتملت عليه أرحام الأنثيين.
Okay, الذكرين. What type of mad here? Mad al-lazim over here, right? Because you have a shadda. You have a shadda on the dhal. And before that was the harf mad. So this becomes 6. You have to make it the longest. نبئوني بعلم إن كنتم صادقين.
نبئوني بعلم إن كنتم صادقين.
Once again, صادقين is مدعار السكون, or the one that is temporary, and we have to follow what we did before, which was the 4 harakah, so we have to be consistent all the time. وَمِنَ الْإِبِلِ اثْنَيْنِ وَمِنَ الْبَقَرِ اثْنَيْنِ.
ومن الإبل اثنين ومن البقر اثنين.
Once again, the اثنين is madleen, and we have to be consistent. Last time we did 4 or 5. Once again, we have to do 4 or 5. We're not allowed to do 2 because we have chosen to do 4 the first time. Therefore, the second time we must be consistent. قُلْ أَذَّكَرَيْنِ حَرَّمَ أَمِ الْأُنثَيَيْنِ أَمَّا اشْتَمَلَتْ عَلَيْهِ أَرْحَامُ الْأُنثَيَيْنِ.
قل أذكرين حرم أم الأنثيين أما اشتملت عليه أرحام الأنثيين.
Okay, once again the الذكرين. Once again we have the same type that we did now. We have a shadda and is preceded by a mad. Okay, so we have to do it 6. The unsayain, once again we get 2 al-maddalin. We have to be consistent with our 4. أَمْ كُنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءَ إِذْ وَصَّاكُمُ اللَّهُ بِهَذَا.
أَمْ كُنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءَ إِذْ وَصَّاكُمُ اللَّهُ بِهَذَا.
Okay, شُهَدَاء, what type of mad? The connected mad. We have to do it 4 or 5. فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا لِيُضِلَّ النَّاسَ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ.
فمن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا ليضل الناس بغير علم.
إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ.
إن الله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين.
And the ظالمين, once again, is the mad adil sukun, or the temporary mad. With this, we come to the conclusion of today's episode, where we discussed where a real sukun occurs after a mad, in which case we have to prolong it to 6 harakas. Inshallah, in our next episode, we'll continue in the rules of mad. I hope to see you next time. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.